whoever else may be watching, welcome to my analysis of the VBL Season 14 draft, particularly from my end, because I guess that's the only end I can look at it from, and I really hope you enjoy. I enjoyed drafting this team, I've enjoyed the people, and I think it's going to go well. So, here we go. Round 1, I drafted Volcarona. Volcarona was 15 points on the board. It was, I wouldn't say everyone's first Pokemon to look at, but when you look at Volcarona's stats, this 135 special attack and this, it's just an incredible mon with incredible versatility because it can set up a Quiver Dance, it can redirect moves away from its teammates with Rage Powder, it can Struggle Bug, it can Will-O-Wisp, you can remind your opponent, of course, that Volcarona has 135 base special attack and evaporate them instantly. Well, I suppose 1/4 of their team instantly, just with like a Specs Overheat or Terra Fire, Fire Blast or something, depending on what kind of roll you'd need to get. I don't think very many people are looking at it for the first round, but this is arguably the best Fire type in Regulation H. Well, at least draft, because it's so versatile, it's so strong, it's so undervalued, honestly. And it's like a real Fire type. It doesn't wimp out with that silly little Intimidate and Fake Out like that little cat does. He'd be burning people with basically his own body like a real one. And you can't bring Terra Grass. You can't bring Terra Grass against this Rage Powder user. Because why would you Terra Grass in front of a Volcarona? And it's just, nobody has any idea what it's going to do when it comes to the game. Your prep for it might be completely useless because, oops, you chose to calc for the wrong fire move. Fire Blast, Overheat, Fiery Dance, oh. Who knows what it could do, really. That's why it's like my favorite Pokemon to use ever in draft. I could go on and on. But brevity is the king, so let's continue. Round 2, I got Tinkaton. Tinkaton's a silly little Pokemon with a silly little hammer, you know? It's got a great typing. Fairy Steel is ridiculous. It's got 1,000,000 resistances, only 2 weaknesses. And it's got access to things like, it's got Fake Out. Fake Out's amazing. You could just make someone not do anything for a turn. It's got Thunder Wave, which can make people not do anything for a significantly longer number of turns indefinitely. It's got access to Encore, which can make people do the same things over and over again. It's got access to Encore, which can make people do the same things over and over again. It's got access to Encore, which can make people do the same things over again. And it's got access to Encore, which can make people do the same things over and over again. I've heard that Jordan really likes that move. I wonder if I should ask him about that. It's also got a move called Gigaton Hammer, which is... You know that 75 attack stat, that supposed liability that it has? What if it hits you with a 160 base power move with no drawbacks? So that's a funny move. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with this thing. It's got like a whole bunch of random moves in the bottom of its toolkit. Like, you can lower special damage with Skitter Smack if you want to. You can taunt, you can fake tears, you can basically do whatever you need to. Facilitated by its decent bulk and its ridiculous number of resistances. So with everything it's got, these stats being low isn't really that much of an issue. Which is why I got it as early as I could, because it's a great support. And then I noticed another mon that probably shouldn't have been on the tier list at that point. Round 3, Dragapult. This is basically the fastest Pokemon in the metagame. 142 speed, only outsped by a singular Pokemon on a singular team, which I am not at all concerned about. Jordan, no. It's versatile, it's good. It's like it's like the only Pokemon I have that's like top 10 in usage in standard play, which is nice. You can do whatever you want with it. You can Dragon Dance, you can slap on a band, Specs, Scarf, you can Will-O-Wisp and Thunderwave and Light Screen and Reflect and what basically anything. Dragon Ghost is just the facilitator of like all of his offense. Not to mention that it gets every coverage move it could ever ask for, which why wouldn't it? 120 and 100 are both good attacking stats, you can use them. And singles players know this very well because they are terrified of Dragapult. Just show a singles player picture of Dragapult. He'll stop ranting about how Stealth Rock's the greatest thing ever created. Even if it's just for a second. So, round 4 is a little bit lower in power, but you know that Scrafty has... It was basically Incineroar before Incineroar existed. Look at this bulk. It's very bulky. It can let me click funny buttons. Scrafty's gonna let me click the funny buttons. Incineroar... It's not Incineroar. Incineroar seems better because, oh, Scrafty has a weakness. It has a 4 times weakness to the best type in the game. Who knew? I have no excuses. But Scrafty can rap. At least I think he can. Hopefully. Unfortunately, I can't. Kilowattrel's a crutch. This Mon, I did the calcs. This Pokemon, Kilowattrel, this 105 isn't very good on paper, but that's only until you realize that Kilowattrel has 2 abilities that double its special attack stats simply for basically just for existing, either against Intimidate or for doing literally its one job, which is setting Tailwind. You double your offense, now you're basically hitting harder than a Chen Pao. Even if it's just for one turn with your electric moves, that has the potential to be very, very powerful since you can take a KO on anything that doesn't resist a type that has very few resistances. Plus, you have 125 base speed, which is faster than the fastest Pokemon on a lot of teams. And he finished... I just like Battery Judas, okay? Judas is gonna do me good. I have my top 5 now. And this top 5 is interesting. We've got great type chart. I'm looking at this. Good stats, but 104 base speed. Speed is very nice to have, it's very important to have, but you don't want all your Pokemon to be fast because then Trick Room's gonna annihilate you, so I was like, oh darn. This might be a problem, isn't it? So I'm like, okay, let's go back and get some Trick Room. That's what I do. Rhyperior. So Rhyperior had a KD of like 42 last season. It was absurd between the divisions. This is a Trick Room Mon. It is a Tailwind Mon. And it is not to be disrespected. I think Rhyperior is very strong. It can spam Rock Slide, which has the potential to ruin people's day. It's got high horsepower, which is coming off of a 140 base attack stat. Earthquake can just melt things sometimes, and it's just good. I'm sorry. I picked Rhyperior because it's good. What a revelation. And 7 is a partner for Rhyperior. I need a Trick Room setter, and this guy is good at... he knows what he does, he's good at what he does. And singles players also hate him for no reason. He's a goofball. He set Trick Room. He's got a lot of support. He's got like Heal Pulse, Helping Hand, I think. He's got obviously Trick Room. He's got Regen. Oblivious makes you immune to taunt, which is good for setting Trick Room. Scald is a funny move that is completely balanced and not at all inclined to ruin someone's day. Hopefully one day he'll find out that he was drafted. He was drafted into World War. But anyway, who's gonna tell him? Like seriously, who's gonna tell him? The silly small child. I feel bad for it, but I can't. This is gonna be a good Pokemon for my team. Slow bro. He's a little he's a little guy. He's a little guy. Anyway. Breloom. Breloom's also a Pokemon that makes me happy for no reason because he's goofy. My Fire Water Grass, Volcarona, Breloom's Slowbro would make. Yeah. Spore. Spore. This is sometime. Amoonguss is like Spore the Pokemon, and it's just so good. But Breloom also has Spore, but it also has this. This number right here is not irrelevant. We got Spore, we got Technician Bullet Seed, Technician Mach Punch, Technician Rock Tomb, all the stuff, and he's a big boy. He's my last big pick. I've got 8 high value Pokemon at the very least, so I can probably rely on them. I'm, this team's gonna do good, I promise. Okay. Round 9, I picked Rotom Frost. Frostum is, I think, the most undervalued Rotom form, mostly because, yeah, defensively it's not as good because, like, Rotom is often used for defense, but this Bolt Beam coverage right here is just so strong. And he's got so many tech moves and utility moves that he's also ends up being pretty versatile. And for only 5 points for those stats, 50 HP is probably the biggest downside to it, but all these stats right here are definitely worth the 5 points. You can Disc Quick with Rhyperior, you can also spam Ice Ground coverage, which is nigh unresisted, and you can do some funny stuff. Tauros. Tauros is my 10th round pick because Tauros filled that valuable hole in my team. So he's got 110, which is more than Volk, but less than Kilo. And it's nice to have an alternate Intimidator to Scrafty because Scrafty can't be my only source of damage mitigation, even though he's definitely not. I need the immunity to Ghost, which is also really, really nice to have, which sort of does make him overlevel Scrafty a bit more, but I'm not concerned about it because Tauros is unique enough, he's got a unique enough move pool and offensive prowess rather than Scrafty's defensive prowess that he's unique. Sheer Force is also a really good option. And I might use that. And lastly, we have Muck. Muck here is... He sits there, he eats special attacks, he sometimes eats physical attacks, he's just kind of chilling on the field, so it makes sense why he's a little bit lower on the tier list, but he's really valuable because of the stats are not at all bad. The typing is not at all bad. The move pool is solid. He can be a defensive win con with like Curse or Amnesia, I suppose. Well, Acid Armor, obviously. Which a lot of my other Pokemon can't really do. So, I think that all of these Pokemon on their own are pretty solid. All these Pokemon are good on a fundamental level, even though there's no obvious synergy between them. I hear people talking about like obvious synergy. My team does not have that like obvious stuff. You don't look at it and immediately see the threat behind it. But I plan on using the team flexibly. This team is meant to be used flexibly. All these Pokemon are very flexible. Volcarona has a million sets it can run. Dragapult, again, Tinkaton. Breloom's got a bunch of things it can do. Rhyperior has a million coverage moves, Muck has a million coverage moves, Tauros does. Like, every Pokemon on my team has a lot of options, and I really am trying to tap into that this season and take advantage of the fact that I have more options at my disposal and more intelligence when it comes to the opposing team during prep. Like, sometimes having something. And honestly, having Pokemon that do obvious things like Indeedee on Psychic Terrain teams, or let's say Politoed is always going to be doing roughly the same things unless you want to go crazy and run Specs or something ridiculous. Choice Band, Belly Drum Politoed. Even though I'm probably gonna run some crazy stuff if I feel like it later anyway. Like Alone the Ninetales is generally going to do the same thing every game. Like Weather and Terrain Setters, Grafii is an option that I go to. Grimmsnarl is almost always going to be setting those screens, although it is very flexible compared to some of these other Pokemon that are supporting. Like, and then there are other Pokemon that are just reliant on support, like Slaking. Slaking's not doing much since you can just protect in front of it if it doesn't have a Grafii by its side to remove its absolutely horrendous ability. Or Hawlucha. Hawlucha's a good Pokemon. It's probably under tiered on this tier list, but that's another thing to talk about later. And Hawlucha, yeah, Hawlucha, Sneasler, bunch of unburdened Pokemon are just so reliant on terrain sometimes. And it's not ideal to have Pokemon that are either reliant on a specific kind of support or are only able to provide a certain kind of support. My goal with my team was to create this set of Pokemon that could be flexed in between each different role, because very few Pokemon don't benefit from having a redirector next to them, like Volcarona. Very few Pokemon don't benefit from Tailwind being up, or I think the only Pokemon that doesn't like Tailwind on my team is Slowbro, because it can't really be fast. Fake Out is very beneficial for almost every Pokemon. Intimidate. If you intimidate a physical attacker, it's still going to be significantly hurt unless you're an unaware, and you'll be safer from the physical attacker unless you're unaware, which is relatively rare, and I don't have one of those on my team. All of my Pokemon benefit from each other's support, so I can go between one Pokemon supporting and another one being the win condition, and then switch them, or go with something else entirely each and every week, and I think that's a really good strength to have. And that's sort of my team building philosophy. A Pokemon is not going to stop being good dependent on the generation or its environment as much. And a team ideally doesn't rely on a single mechanic in order to win games. You want something that can go back and forth between different options, because different options will be good in different games. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. I like my draft. I really like how it turned out. I thought about speed tiers. These speed tiers, I think they look pretty solid. Tinkaton should be at 94, but right here, my type chart, it looks great. I've got a Pokemon of every type. I've got no weaknesses to speak of. I've got... Honestly, I feel like this team has a lot going for it, and I'm looking forward to using it. I'm looking forward to just, like, chilling with the folks at VBL, and I catch you sometime later. And I guess that's a thorough analysis of my draft. I like how each of these Pokemon is able to function on their own, but they also function together. And I thought that was the entire point of draft all along. That's the entire point of collaboration all along. Humans are meant to work together. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day and that you love yourself, because I can't be there to love you for you, okay? See ya.